Welcome to Listen In. I'm Brian Gahan, and this podcast focuses on the stories that are buried deep inside all conversations. Be it the kind of conversation you have with someone whose life experience is full of interesting POVs and insights, or the kind of conversation you have inside your own head around your own life experiences. Today, in episode 3, I'm going to be talking with Amy MacCutchan, Chief Hooper and Fitness Cheerleader at Hooper Sonic. I've always loved people that can connect joyful play, a love for movement, and a little magic into their life's purpose. And Amy, she is somebody who's done exactly that. From her first hoop jam to entertaining large groups with hoops of fire and lights, Amy explores the world of hooping and how it can cross age and cultural boundaries. Hi, Amy. Welcome to Listen In.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, you're more than welcome. So the one question I have for you, because I'm so curious, lots of times I've seen on a beach or in a park or, at an event, somebody with a hula hoop and it's flying around their body and maybe there's flames on it or it lights up. And the first thing that always goes through my mind is how cool, but also how did this person get there?
Yeah, and I probably know all those people in the park that you see. We're a pretty tight community here in Toronto. But how did I get to the hula hoop? Well, as a child, I was not very good at hula hooping, one might say. I didn't really understand what to do with my hips, and I wasn't one of those kids that just picked up the hula hoop and just started going. Therefore, I did not attempt it at all in my young adult life. And then one time I was at a barbecue and there was a competition and people said, well, you have to go do it. And I threw the hoop around my body and it immediately fell to the ground. I did not win. And, basically, a few years later, I bumped into a friend on the street and I said, hey, what are you doing in my neighborhood? She said, I'm going to a hula hoop class. And I said, what? I literally said, well, that kind of sounds stupid. And she said, no, it's really fun. You'd be really surprised at how fun it is. And I said, all right, well, if you want me, I'll try it out with you. She said, well, better yet, there is what we call a hoop jam. And it's free. It's in a park and a bunch of the local hoopers come and they bring their hoops and they bring extra because they want other people to try. And so I went one July afternoon, and this is fast forward, I think I'm 30 at this point. And somebody gave me the right sized hoop and gave me a little bit of instruction, and I was off, and that was it. And that I will always remember that night in the park as being one of the most important nights of my life, because it now has turned into my profession. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And it's sort of interesting how, I was saying, you see these people in parks. And so I wonder if there's something connected with that playfulness and the hula hoop.
Yeah.
You didn't learn it in a classroom. You learned it outside in nature, in a park.
I did. However, shortly after my experience in the park, I was signing up for classes. So I had a little mixture of, going into a class and having that technical learning experience, and then going to the park and getting to practice all the new things that I learned, seeing everybody around me and being inspired. It's very inspiring to be around a group of people who have the same interests as you, but maybe have been doing it longer, or they have different styles, and just watching them do their thing. And it's really great in the park because you have all the room that you need. Hula hoops go flying. It doesn't matter. When I'm in my tiny little Toronto house, I may have taken pieces out of my door frame and whatnot. I've heard of lamps being destroyed and several other things.
Yeah, I can imagine. So You mentioned about somebody gave you the right size hula
Yeah.
hoop. So that takes me down the thought path of the evolution of the hula hoop, because when I was a kid, they were all just the same. They were just a
Yeah.
big plastic ring.
Mm-hmm.
So explain to me when you say the right size a hula hoop.
That is a question that I hope to get out to the world. Most people think they, and I'm using air quotes here, can't hoop. I don't like that word, but people think that they can't hoop. But really it's because they're using the wrong hoop. And what I mean by the wrong hoop is they're going to the dollar store and they're picking up a hoop that is intended for a child. And not just a child, but a very small child. The ones that they have in, let's say, the dollar store or any of the other big box stores. They tend to be light, very small. And that is not suitable for adults, because when you're bigger, or even like teenagers, people who are taller, the larger the diameter of the hoop, the slower it's going to travel around your body. And the heavier the hoop, the more it's going to dig kind of into your body. And that's when the extra cushioning comes in handy. The heavier and larger the hoop is, the easier it is to hoop. And that is something that people don't quite understand until I give them the hoop and they go, oh my gosh, I can actually hula hoop. And everybody has this little revelation. Some people it takes a little longer, and it's not just the size of the hoop, right? It's how do you hoop? So it's also it's a combination of the right hoop and the proper instruction. So yeah.
And I can imagine that sort of feeling of, oh my God, I can hoop, because it's one of those things that as kids, we all tried it, and we all, or not all of us, but a lot of us failed at it, and we always maybe wanted to be good at it.
Yeah.
And so there must be this incredible connection with our childhood sort of joy, no matter how old you are, if somebody comes along and says, hey, here, try this, and you can actually do it.
Yeah. It's like a cartwheel. I probably wouldn't attempt a cartwheel, but this is something that anybody can do. It's something that is low impact. So even as an adult, it's something that people can relive their childhood through, and they can experience that playfulness. And eventually, once they get better, they can experience the joy of the creativity, that output of creativity. So there's the hula hoop is a magical thing to me. And I remember the moment that I got it, and I remember saying, oh my gosh, like, this is life-changing, And a lot of people walk around the world like I did for 30 years going, oh, I can't, air quotes, hoop.
Right.
But really, anybody can. As long as they, we find the right movements for them, and we find the right hoop for them. And it's not just about waist hooping. You can hoop anywhere on your body, really. So that's a fabulous thing too. It's like if you are unable to stand, maybe you depend on a wheelchair, we can always find things for you to do on the side with a hoop or overhead. And those are the kinds of things that I love about it as well.
Nice. I know Michelle Obama, when she started her Let's Move program back, I think it was in 2010, she showed up on the White House lawn with hula hoops for everybody to use. I
did hear about that.
And I'm wondering, do you think that helped ignite the acceptance of it, or do you think that had any conjunction with people sort of seen as an acceptable form of exercise?
Yeah, absolutely. And not just her, but Sharon Osbourne's, what's her daughter's name? Kelly Osbourne. She actually was a big promoter of the hula hoop to use it as a fitness tool. And she was featured on the front of a magazine, her and the hula hoop. And I think that was a huge thing. Beyonce also came out and said, the hula hoop is where it's at. I remember a couple of years ago, I was watching Ellen, or I'd seen a clip on Ellen, and she featured a like legit like professional hula hooper. So I think it's, it's coming around. People are starting to realize kind of its magic and its benefit to fitness. And yeah, I think Michelle Obama definitely did, bring a little bit more popularity to the hula hoop so that adults can actually see it as something beneficial to them as well.
Yeah, because her idea was to sort of get kids active. And, so she used a hula hoop for kids, but then she's the first lady and she's using a hula hoop.
Yes.
And so all of a sudden people are like, oh, it's okay. And then, as you say, Beyonce and all the other people, were out there doing it as well. So there was this resurgence of it coming in as a form of legitimate exercise. But it's sort of like there's this entertainment aspect and joy aspect. And so I was saying to somebody the other day, it's not like yoga teachers go to corporate events and perform yoga in front of people as entertainment.
Yes.
So you're part entertainer,
yes,
part fitness person.
Yes.
So where does that come from?
Well, I think the fact that not everybody out there is able to use the hula hoop, and the fact that I know more than the average person on how to move the hula hoop up and down my body or use multiple hoops at once. People are pretty amazed by that, because the common thought is that I can't use a hula hoop, or most people can't hula hoop, or it's just for kids. Then they see this grown woman, get up on the stage and then spin hula hoops on 4 parts of her body. They're incredibly entertained, and they're just, wow. So, yeah, I just, I don't know how it happened for me. I know that I found kind of 2 things. I found 2 separate, I don't know how to explain it. I found 2 separate ways to experience joy through the hula hoop. And that was from a fitness point of view and from a creative output kind of point of view. And the creative aspect allowed me to deal with certain things going on in my life. It was very therapeutic. So I did really enjoy the fitness aspect, because it gave me, a stronger core. I burned some calories. It was it was good for cardio. But the creative side was, when I was feeling angry and I was feeling mad, I was able to just let go and get into my hoop and just forget about the world for a little bit. So those are the 2, main things that I get out of it. But once I started realizing that there was people making money out there from the hula hoop and doing performances, I got interested, and I started learning, circus-y style crowd-pleasing moves. I did a few demonstrations at festivals and whatnot in our neighborhood. And I just went, oh my gosh, it feels so good to have an audience. And I love that feeling of like nervousness just before you get on stage, and that adrenaline rush of the audience reacting well to whatever you've done on stage. So I love both aspects, teaching the classes and performing. But really, there's nothing like just being in a room on my own and just putting on a really good song, really loud, and just letting myself kind of go and be free.
Oh, that's amazing. And it must be interesting, because if you're performing in front of people of all ages, it's not like you're, doing puppet shows for little kids, and yes, adults can enjoy it, but it's really focused for little kids. You're doing something that everybody can connect with.
Yeah.
And it must just bring a lot of joy.
It does. And I'm more of a family-friendly entertainer. However, I should mention that, like any kind of dance, let's say, most dance can be, family-friendly, everybody can enjoy. But there are, styles of dance that are more exotic and like a little bit, sensual and maybe sexual and not specifically for children. So, like in any dance, that also applies to hoop dance. You can maybe make it a little burlesque. You can shake your butt at the audience a little bit. But, those are the kinds of things that I wouldn't do at a family event. For example, there was a corporate event that I just did, and I shook my butt a little bit at them, but it was all in kind of more of a comedic kind of form. But I have some good friends who do some really great burlesque hoop dance routines, and I think those are just fantastic as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can just imagine. Yeah, that would be, especially if you don't expect it, like
No.
if you're some event and you don't know what the entertainment's going to be, and then that comes on stage, and wow. I've seen you do the one with the fire on it that goes
Yes.
around your neck.
I don't typically do fire around my neck, but I do it on my shoulders.
Oh.
But yeah, you can hoop on your neck. You can hula hoop on your head, actually, from head to toe. But yeah, fire hooping is something that I do purely for the adrenaline rush. Because the way that the hoop is built, it's kind of limits your choices of what you can do with the hula hoop and not get burnt. Some people are a little bit more brave and they will do whatever moves they want because they have no fear of the fire. If you have fear of fire, then you're limited as to what you can do with a fire hoop. It has 5 wicks or 3. There's multiple, styles of fire hoops that you can get, but I have one with 5 wicks. So there's basically the wicks are protruding from all around the hoop. So basically anything that involves my hand being on the outside, I just need to be aware of where the flames are. So if I ever am, I have a friend that wants to try it out, we'll do it in my backyard or something. And they'll just be on their waist the whole time. And they'll be like, woohoo, it's so much fun. They'll spin out the fire. And then afterwards, they're like, they've got this adrenaline rush, right? And I remember that the first time my throat was dry because of, you're breathing in like the smoke, and it's so good. And there's nothing like it. Even if you're just on your waist, right? But yes, I'm definitely a little more cautious with what I do when my hoop's on fire.
Exactly. I can imagine. So you were talking about, like sort of that adrenaline rush and the excitement.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're working with people with the hoop, when you're teaching people how to do the hoop, like what are some of the memories you have of it? Just like, whether it was an emotional memory or you saw somebody break through something, or, just take me back to some memory.
That is definitely one of my favorite things about being a teacher, is seeing those breakthrough moments. I remember there was a woman, and she came to me, and she was a senior, and she was overweight and had a lot of issues with her knees. And she came to my 6-week series, and I always remember her because she didn't quite get the waist hooping. But this woman borrowed hoops from me. I lent her hoops because she was so determined. And then she ended up buying a hoop. But I ended up lending her a really big one, very slow. And she really appreciated that. So this woman would go home every night. And I know she was, trying in between classes. Whereas most people, I say, do some hula hooping in between classes. And they're like, okay. And I know they're not doing it. But this woman, I could tell she was going home and she was trying. Maybe it was in smaller increments because of her age and ability. But I just remember she did the beginner series, and then she did another beginner series, and then she did another. And I remember, I think it was halfway between the second series that she did, she finally nailed it. And she was just smiling from ear to ear. And we tried various methods with her. Everybody's different, right? The way that they absorb information and their bodies and the way that their brain works, right? So it was quite a moment for both of us, me as an instructor and her as a student, to really connect finally with the waist hooping, and just to see that joy on her face was amazing. And I just love being able to experience that. That is one of my older memories of being a teacher, but they happen all the time, and there's a lot of arms going up in the air. Woo!
Yeah, a lot of celebration.
A lot of celebration.
So I did notice on your website, and it's hoopersonic.com, right?
Yes.
Hoopersonic. You have some pictures of your classes, and I did notice that there is a fair number of older people.
Yeah. Especially in my Hooper size class, which is the fitness one.
Right.
Yeah, and I love it. Those are my people. Like those are the kind of, like, that's the age group that I really love to teach, because a lot of the times they're looking for a way to work out or just move and like get their bodies moving. They're not looking to maybe like lose weight or whatever. They're just looking for a fun way to get some cardiovascular like maybe strengthen their core and whatnot, and just have a laugh, A lot of my students in that class, I would say they range from 50 to 70 on an average, would be like in 60s. So yeah, it's just, you got to be a little bit more aware of bodies and abilities. Everybody's body is different, and that's why I'm doing some training to become a personal trainer. And I feel like that kind of crossover is really going to assist me with those types of students who have, or any student with any kind of injury, right? But basically they're just looking for a laugh and looking for a fun time. And at the end of class, they will come in and they'll be like, hey, how's it going? And at the end of class, they're like, see you next week. So I love them. And I've been teaching some of them for 5 years. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. My oldest student is, I believe, 72. I'm sorry if I don't have that right, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, if it's less than, they'll be happy.
Yeah. I don't want to overshoot it.
The beats, I mean, you told us how you kind of got into hooping,
Yeah.
but is there, can you draw a straight line, or is it a zigzag world that you went through to get up to where you are now? Like, what's your experience? Did you dance before? Were you always into fitness?
Right. I was not really big into fitness. I was only moderately into fitness at all. I think it was just from discovery to attending classes, about a year and a half later, I expressed my interest in, there's a woman who taught in the East End, and she owns a company called Sugar Hoop. So that's the other hoop company that teaches classes in Toronto. Mainly in the West End right now, but she used to have them in the East End, and those are the classes that I started at. And I said, would it be all right if I taught a class one time? I'm feeling like I have the itch to teach. Mm-hmm. And it took a little while, but finally I got the opportunity to teach a class, and I was just like, yeah, this is what I want to do. So I taught for her for a while, and then when she pulled out of the East End and moved to the East Coast, I decided to start Hoopersonic, which was almost 4 years ago. So, and that's kind of, it has been a zigzag, because I started with 1 or 2 classes, and now I'm doing 3 that have been consistently running for over a year. There was a lot of trying this day, trying this location, trying this type of class. And, there was a lot of fails along the way. But I feel like I have something really solid right now, and I'm really proud and happy with what I'm offering at the moment.
So what you said you had an itch to teach. Tell me describe that. What was it you wanted?
Yeah. So I don't know if I told you this before, but I actually worked in corporate for a long time. And I worked in collections. You might want to bleep that out. And while within that industry, I worked my way up into a training and recruitment position. I realized then I really enjoyed teaching people. I loved it. But was I teaching people what I wanted to teach? Probably not. But I realized then my personality is very much a leader. And my son's teacher says, your son is, and he pauses and says, a leader. And I said, it's okay, you can say bossy. So I feel like I'm maybe a little bit bossy. And I love to be able to, build a class and then just watch that class unfold before my eyes. So I've always loved talking and teaching, and I felt like it was just the next step for me from taking all those classes, and I understood it. And the way that I felt at that point was that I can verbally and physically describe what needs to happen to these people, and I'm ready, and I'm excited.
So where's the weirdest or strangest place hooping has taken you to?
Very many, but one that really stands out would be my friend is in a band. It's a surf rock band, and the entire band wears these luchador masks, and basically they reached out and said, hey, we're looking for somebody to entertain the audience as well, like while we're playing. So surf rock, I don't know if you're familiar, but there's very little to mostly no lyrics at all. It's just musical or instrumental. So they asked, we have a burlesque dancer that comes sometimes, and we'd love to have you come with your hoops. And I said, oh, well, I have some LED ones too, if you want. And they said, sure, that sounds great. So I show up the first time I did this for them at the Cadillac Lounge in West End, Toronto. And then they asked me to do it again the following year. And it ended up they were on this tiny little stage, and there was nowhere to go on the floor. So it was very, very tiny. And it went well, and everybody enjoyed it. So they asked me to come to Hamilton with them one time. So we all crammed in a car. And the guy who kind of started the band passed me a luchador mask with the letter A on it. And I was like, thanks. He said, yeah, well, now you're a part of the crew. Like, you got to wear the luchador mask. I'm like, okay, cool. So there I am in this, Hamilton bar, hula hooping in this luchador mask that was far too big for me, and it just kept slipping up, and I kept going blind. I couldn't see anything, so it was kind of a disaster. I ended up taking it off the next time, but yes, a seedy little bar in a luchador mask was one of the weirdest things I've been asked to do.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to say this just in case I didn't. So the luchador mask is the Mexican wrestler mask, right?
Yes, and the band is actually Blue Demons, which I believe they're named after one of the wrestlers.
What are some of the other strange? Like, is there another strange place you've ended up, or?
I actually had to hula hoop in -30 weather at the distillery. I did some performing, and I was in a huge parka, hula hooping in a big parka. That was one thing that was kind of interesting. A lot of people who are performers in Toronto, they do some outdoor stuff in the winter, and it's quite interesting.
That's when you really want your hoop on fire.
Yeah, but unfortunately it was not a fire event. But I've hula hooped. I bring my hula hoop around the world with me. If I travel, I try to take some hula hooping shots. I have one of me in the Coliseum, hula hooping in Rome.
Okay, so okay, we're on to something here. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, how do you get a hula hoop on a plane?
So most of the time I'll bring a hula hoop that kind of coils down. I have one that is quite large and it breaks into pieces. Normally I can just carry that on and put it in the overhead compartment. I also have another one that coils down and can go in a larger suitcase. However, a few times while traveling, again in Italy, I was looked at quite strangely and was asked about it, and it was inspected because this is one that I can wear basically on my back in the style of a sword. So, yeah, I was definitely given some strange looks and asked a lot of questions. One time a couple asked me to do some stuff on the plane. I was like, I don't think that's going to work out. But yeah, so there's been some interesting looks and conversations at security in airports.
I can imagine. Like, there was one time I was doing something with athletes, and I was at the airport, and there was the pole vaulters there with their poles getting on the plane, and it's like a ski bag, but 20 times longer, and they're just standing in the lineup to get on the plane, and they've got these ginormous pole vaults, and I was just like, wow, it's always interesting when you wonder how certain people kind of travel, and so I never knew that hoops could fold up like that. Yes,
there's various travel hoops out there. Some of them coil down, some of them go into this infinity shape and then you fold them. Some of them break apart completely. Some of them have an elastic in the middle to keep them together, and you can put them in a yoga bag.
So, okay, so you like to take your hoop to unique places in the world. So what's that connection for you?
I feel like it's really interesting to hoop in other places. But I find it hard. Like, people always start to watch you and gather around and make, it kind of causes a little bit of a scene sometimes when you're just trying to like go for a fun photo or something. But I don't mind talking to people and answering their questions if they have them. But it depends on where I am, like normally I'm just like doing a quick photo with my husband behind the camera, in front of the fountain in Rome as well. And like, in Switzerland, we did a couple of photos there too. But yeah, it's always an interesting experience. Depends on how busy the place is where you are. If it's a big tourist place, then it's a little more difficult. But,
right.
And I was in Costa Rica last year. And I had it was nice. It was so hot, so you don't almost want to hula hoop too much, but it's been around, my hoop.
Yeah, you're reminding me of when I first learned to inline skate, and back then we called it rollerblading because that was the brand.
Yeah.
And I would rollerblade around in Toronto, and people would constantly stop and talk to you if you stopped at an intersection because they hadn't seen, or they were curious. They might have seen it, but they were now, there's one right beside me. I'm going to ask this guy all the questions. Yeah. So they'd ask you like millions of questions, and cars would even stop and roll down their window and ask questions. And then I took them to England because I was living in England for about a couple of months once. So I took my inline skates, and I did not see a person there inline skating. But when I inline skated, nobody would make eye contact with me. They pretended I didn't exist.
That's so weird.
So it was this interesting cultural thing, right? Yeah. Whereas in North America, people are okay going, hey, what are you doing with these things on your feet? But there, it was like nothing. So culturally, have you noticed that there's a difference, or does it, does the hula hoop cross cultural boundaries, or is it something that some cultures look at you and go like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, no, I honestly, because it's such a fun thing and it's so well known across the world, most people are very accepting of it. And I've done a lot of multicultural events where everybody has fun no matter who they are. I do follow a lot of hula hoop dancers on Instagram. And actually, funny enough, I have a blog where I interview a new hooper every month. So last year I did it consistently for the whole year, and it was really great. And everybody answered my questions, and it was nice to see the comparison of answers between different people. But this year I've challenged myself with interviewing somebody from a different country every month. So it's called a Hooper of the Month. And so I've been really exploring all of the different hoopers around the world, and it's just the same thing in a different country. You see people doing like the same moves and they're posting on Instagram. But I know there was some challenges. I have a friend who moved to Dubai, and she started kind of like a little hoop revolution there, which was great because, it was never previously there. And she also knew of a lot of Muslim women who were hula hooping and kind of just experiencing something that was a little bit more expressive physically, which is not very common over there. So, there definitely is cultural differences. Not that I've really experienced on a personal level from where I've gone and traveled to. But I do know that in countries where maybe women don't have the same opportunities as here, it might be a little different because of the way that you have to move your hips and, thrust forward and, move your body a little more sensually. So I imagine that is a thing, but I haven't personally experienced it.
So, question I have for you, do you believe in magic?
I believe in illusions.
So explain that when you say, I believe in illusions.
Magic is such I use the term all the time, but in a sense of joy. I believe magic can be just experiencing something that you've never experienced before and or didn't know that you could experience. So I find hula hooping to be magic. I refer to it as the magic of hoop dance all the time because of all the magical like benefits that you get from it. The emotional benefits, the physical benefits. It's such a wonderful tool, as is any flow prop. It's a magical experience. And I usually associate that word with joy. So, yeah.
So that's interesting. So you see it as experiencing something that you've never experienced before is a sense or an essence of magic.
Yes.
Wow. That's nice. I've never thought of it that way.
Because a lot of people think of magic as, hey, pulling a rabbit out of a hat. Here it is. And I think it's so much more than that. I love that word because it has two completely like different meanings in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And the magic also comes from me as an instructor seeing other people nail techniques or tricks or just the basic waist hooping, and that to me is magic as well. Mm-hmm. So you can also do these moves with the hoop that blow people's minds a little bit. So I like to call that magic too.
Now that's more of the illusion, right?
Those are complete illusions. Yeah.
Where'd the hoop go?
People are always asking me, there's a move that we do called isolations. And those are like, kids come up to me all the time and they're like, how did you do that? And I was like, it's magic. Never ask a magician to reveal themselves.
Oh, that's so cool. Tell me how you see, like, where do you see hooping going?
Well, I hope it becomes more popular because, it's my job. But I see it as becoming more popular with people. I feel like getting the word out there is super important through, mediums such as podcasts like this, telling people that it's not you, it's the hoop and the movement that you're doing. So getting that message out there is something that I really, really want to do. And I've been trying to do by doing events in the neighborhood or, there was another, I was trying to do a video of people, pre my explanation of hula hooping and post and showing a video. So I started gathering this footage. I have not done anything with it, but it's basically saying, do you think you can do this? And most people would say, no, I can't do this, or I'm skeptical that I will be able to. And then I show them how to do it, and magically they are they are hula hooping. So most of them would get it. So that's the one issue with making hula hooping more popular, is that, you know, people have to see it to believe it and experience it to believe it, because there's all this skepticism surrounding it. And just to get that message out there would be super helpful to our community. And I hope that's where it goes. But I know that it's getting more popular. I'm getting people contacting me, like, you know, I was in the Toronto Star recently. People are like, oh yeah, that sounds so cool. You know, for beginners, that sounds great. And like, the more popularity, the more publicity that it gets, the better it's going to be for everybody.
And so you said one thing that people have to understand, that it's not them, it's the hoop. Explain that to me.
Well, like I was saying earlier, the size of the hoop totally matters. And if you're using a toy hoop and your body is much larger than, you know, the intended person, which is a child for these tiny hoops, then, you know, it's not going to work out for you. So really it all just comes down to the hoop and the movement that you're doing. A lot of people think you go around in a circle, right? So you don't actually go in a circle. That creates less momentum and causes the hoop to fall down, unless you're advanced and know how to do that particular motion. But it's more of a back and forth motion or a side to side motion. And I mean, I could talk about this forever, but you just are going to have to come to a class and find out. And really, there's a lot of tips and techniques to, like, becoming a really strong waist hooper. But it's the thought, that process that is out there, that, oh, you have to go around with a hula hoop. When people do the universal hula hooping motion, is this circle with your hips, which is totally incorrect. So it's not your fault. It's the fault of everybody out there who started, you know, the circular motion for hula hoops.
You know those things that are out on Instagram right now, or Twitter, I'm not sure. I think it's Instagram, where it's like 10 years ago and people are showing a picture 10.
Yeah.
So you were saying, you know, you show people on video before they've learned, and then you teach them, and then you show them after. If you had to do that on Instagram, how much time would that be? Is it 10 seconds, 10 minutes? Like, how long does it take?
Right. So that's a very good question. Some people, right away, as soon as I give them the larger hoop, they've got it, even though they couldn't do it before. Some people need a little bit more instruction, a little bit more practice, and a little bit more guidance with where to push from. A lot of people want to swing their legs, and I have to correct that. So those are the kinds of things that it's really dependent on the person. Again, injuries, maybe they're a little bit older, or a larger person. You know, it's all really dependent. Like I said, I had that woman, it took her over 6 weeks of classes to actually get it. But some people just pick it up right away. I would say, like, for example, the beginner class that I have right now, everybody got it really, really quickly. And I'm learning all the time. There's no hula hoop instructor, you know, handbook.
Right.
There's not that kind of thing. So I'm teaching myself all the time. I'm learning new ways to explain what I'm doing and how I'm doing it so well. You know, I mean, practice is also a thing. People are like, oh, how do you do it so well? I'm like, well, 8 years of practice, you know, 8 years of practice and 8 years of just, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Learning other people's bodies and how the brain and the body work together. Because that must be incredible. Like, when somebody is like, oh no, I can't do that. And then, oh my God, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Like, and especially if that's a quick, short period of time.
Yeah.
It must be a, you know, a really joyous moment for people.
Yes. I have some people that come up to me at the end of the hour and they're like, man, thank you so much, because I've been trying to do that forever. Some of them since they were kids, and they couldn't do it. And, you know, my success rate has been greater, obviously, as my experience goes on. I've been teaching for about 5 years. And like I said, I'm learning all the time. I'm gaining more experience. I'm noticing little things in people's bodies, like what are they doing? What made that click? And I'll even ask people as soon as they get something, I'm like, what made that click for you? What did I say? Or what did you do that made it click for you? So as a teacher, you have to also be open to not like looking like the professional all the time, and like be willing to be vulnerable and ask questions about their learning experience as well, and not being afraid to say, like, tell me about what you did to make this work for you. I'd love to know as a teacher.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point for all teachers, right? Or all people who are trying to, convey information to other people.
Absolutely.
Is to have the humility to say, hey, like, I don't know what just I did that connected with you.
Yeah.
Like, what did I just say, or what did I just get you to do that made the light go off? That's
And as a parent too, I'm a mom of a 5-year-old boy, and we've definitely been experiencing some challenges as parents, and as a team, as a family. And one thing that I really noticed lately, I've been doing some reading and, learning some things about that as well. But the more involved, everybody is in processes, instead of me saying this is how things are, the more, the happier everybody is, and the more involved everybody's going to be and invested in the decisions. So I find that, like, that in all aspects of life, just working as a team and showing a little bit of vulnerability and not being afraid to ask questions of other people is beneficial in every part of your life, as a teacher, as a parent, as a person, in your friendships, in your relationship.
And I think that that's sort of like maybe really unique to hula hooping, because hula hooping is something that's like, it is not a science, and it is not something like you say where you go and you learn and you get taught the proper way, like some certain types of, whether it's sports or yoga or meditation, a lot of times there's sort of like, here's the rule book,
technique.
right? Whereas like with hula hooping, it's the end result is what matters.
Yeah, and we're writing it as we go along. I'm writing my own rule book and my own, kind of ways to explain techniques, and that's just the way it is. I mean, there are some programs out there that people can take for, certifications, but what do they mean? I have no idea. It's such a weird thing to say, I'm a hula hoop instructor. So yeah, it's definitely, you go to the bank and they ask you for your profession or whatever. It's like, yep, I'm a hula hoop instructor. It's definitely not that well known. I usually get a couple of cocked eyebrows or, oh, that's so cool. I always carry flyers around with me because everybody is interested in it when you tell them about it. But yeah, there's no rule book. There's no, manual as to this is the way to do things. Everybody kind of has their own little ways of explaining stuff. And that's why I kind of am going into the personal training thing too. It's just like creating that visual with your words, right? Trying to create a visual movement or something to like get their brain connected with how to do whatever that is they're trying to do. So
yeah, I go to my naturopath, and she's a chiropractor naturopath, and like she'll be like, move your hip, and then you won't do anything, and you're trying to think like, what is she asking me to do? And then she'll go, yeah, that's better. And so your body makes this movement, but you intellectually don't even understand, what did I just do?
No, associating things with imagery sometimes really helps people. So people ask me, how do I engage my core? What does that even mean? Right? And people start to not breathe and they'll hold their breath. And I'm like, no. So I've heard many different fun ways on how to do that. But sometimes you just say, just brace yourself like I'm going to punch you in the stomach, but also try to breathe. Some people say, like, imagine trying to do up really, really tight jeans and you're on the, on the bed trying to do up your jeans. But I mean, trying to link a physical movement with a visual, is really helpful for people. And that's what I'm working on more as an instructor, and hoping that the personal training as well is that's going to really benefit from that as well. Because I find you can tell people, move your elbow somewhere, and they don't really understand, but to scrape your body with your elbows or whatever, that gives you more of an instruction. So, I mean, everybody's brains are different. Some people's do appreciate the visual. Some people, they want to know, they want me to verbally explain everything. Other people are like, shut up and do the move. Just
Right.
shut up and do the move, and do it again and again and again. So everybody's different, but it's nice. It's nice to encounter these different personalities.
Where can people find you if they want to learn more?
I am all over social media, but my website is www.hoopersonic.com. And you can find a lot of my kind of free flow hooping videos. So just me kind of just doing some freestyle on my Instagram. That's where I like to post those. And I'm at hoopersonic_Toronto. And those are my two main. Oh, Facebook is also a great place to learn about all the events that I'm putting on. And that's Hoopersonic Toronto on Facebook. I'm not really on the Twitter that much.
Well, what we'll do is we'll put a bunch of links to
Great.
how people get in touch with you on our website under
Yes.
this episode.
Great.
And then that way, anybody who's interested can come along and learn more. Well, I'd like to thank you so much for being a guest on Listen In.
Thank you so much for having me. I had such a great time.
Oh, you're welcome, Amy. Take care.
Take care.
Bye. Well, that's another episode of Listen In. Thanks for being. Please subscribe, leave comments, or head on over to our website at listeninpod.com. That's listen with 2 N's, pod.com, where you'll find episode notes, links to anything that we talked about in this episode, and you can connect with us about being a guest on Listen In.